following review contains massive spoilers for Doctor Strange, so if for some reason you haven't seen the film yet, get out there and see it, and then come back to listen to the rest of the review. There's no denying that Marvel is on an 8-year hot streak right now with their cinematic universe, a collection of now 14 films that have all been pretty well received. At this point, any movie containing Marvel's mightiest heroes, be it a solo film or a team-up, is bound to be great or at least enjoyable, in addition to making millions of dollars at the box office. However, lately Marvel has been taking some gambles on their less popular characters, or rather characters that would have had a snowball's chance in hell of ever getting a movie in the past. You honestly think that 10 years ago a studio would have approved a movie involving a talking raccoon and tree? In the last few years, we had the awesome Guardians of the Galaxy and the pleasantly surprising Ant-Man, and now we find ourselves in a similar situation with Doctor Strange, a very popular comic book character to be sure, but his media appearances outside of the comics has been limited. So how does Doctor Strange hold up to the other Marvel films? Well, despite some minor flaws, Doctor Strange is a great addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, containing a fun origin story, and probably has the best visuals in any Marvel movie to date, especially when you see it in 3D. So let's just get the negative out of the way first, since there's not much of it. So, big surprise here, but the main villain Caecilius is not the best, and this time it hurts all the more since he's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who is a great actor. The big issue I had with Caecilius here is that while we see him in the beginning, literally in the opening scene, he doesn't actually do anything meaningful until almost the halfway mark. Yeah, you see him and his minions moving around, performing spells and twisting the environment around, but he doesn't really speak, and so the audience is generally left unaware of his motives until way later in the plot. When he does start talking and interacting with Strange, it's fun and engaging, but there's just not enough of it. The other issue is that we really don't get to know that much about him. Sure, there's the scene where some exposition is forced in when Mordo and Strange are fighting, and Strange starts asking questions about him. We learn that he lost everyone he ever loved when he came to Kamar-Taj, but that's about it. And really, what does that mean? Did he lose his wife, his child, best friends? I don't know. I like how Caecilius felt like he wasn't a real villain, and that time was the true enemy. But without more of that backstory, it doesn't really resonate as well as it might have. Knowing more about what exactly he lost and why he feels so strongly against time and why he wants to live forever and as for the rest of the world to live that way too, it's not really well explained. And that's pretty much it for the negative. You know, I really should review more Marvel movies on this channel. I mean, it's so much less to criticize than DC. Now for the good, and there's actually quite a lot of it. First and foremost, the cast. Benedict Cumberbatch, Chiwetel Ejiofor, God, I hope I didn't butcher his name, Rachel McAdams, Benedict Wong, Mads Mikkelsen, and Tilda Swinton. They are all great, and you really love every minute they're on screen. Cumberbatch is spot on as Strange. The arrogance he has in the beginning is toned just right. It's not over the top to make him look like a complete ass, but it's just enough there for you to dislike him. His character art was brilliantly handled. I mean, all this guy wants to do is fix his hands and get back to his normal life. He doesn't care about any of this fantasy, mystic stuff about saving the world or protecting the world. He just wants to go back to his normal, everyday doctor life. And yet the Ancient One senses that he can be capable of so much more, and it's really his journey to try to come to terms with that. And finally, by the end of the film, when he's face to face with Dormammu, you see the change where he puts ego aside and uses his abilities to save others rather than himself, where he accepts to lose over and over again in the time loop that he's created, rather than just winning outright. Ejiofor's Mordo was also fantastic, since the film brilliantly chose to make Mordo an ally to Strange rather than make him the villain outright. I was kind of worried that they would have made Mordo the jealous student, you know, upset that the Ancient One was spending more time with Strange, or that he was pissed off that Strange got to use all the cool relics like the Eye of Agamotto and the Cloak of Levitation, but thankfully they didn't go that way. Yes, the post-credit scene shows that Mordo has finally made that transformation from hero to villain, but that's another great example of how well written his character arc was. Mordo at the beginning of the film has a very pure, unwavering belief in the Ancient One's teachings, unlike Strange and even Caecilius, who kind of share this thing of let's question her teachings and where she gets her powers from, whereas Mordo just purely believes just on faith alone. When Mordo comes face to face with the truth that the Ancient One was drawing power from the Dark Dimension, you can see that his faith is a little bit shaken, and then when Strange ends up using the Eye of Agamotto to essentially rewind the film's climax and prevent all the death and destruction in Hong Kong, Mordo believes that even while Strange's intentions were done for the greater good, defying the natural order of the world will eventually come to bite them in the ass, and it likely will, since Dormammu will most likely return for revenge. Rachel McAdams and Benedict Wong were also great as well, even if they were mostly used as supporting characters. McAdams was used mostly to humanize Strange, and Wong for some of the more comedic elements, though McAdams gets in on some of that as well, like during Strange's battle in the astral plane in the hospital. Though McAdams has a really great scene with Cumberbatch in the beginning when he yells at her to leave him alone. It really got a nice reaction from the audience. Mads Mikkelsen, like I mentioned before, is great. He's just underused, and I really would have liked to see more of him. When we first see him, he just seems like he doesn't talk a lot, and I was kind of worried we were going down the same road as Malekith from Thor the Dark World, where you've got a great actor in the role, but you've given him zip. You've given him nothing to really play with, nothing to really sink his teeth into, and they've kind of given Mikkelsen kind of a sort of humorous, sort of tragic take on it I think he kind of went with, where he's kind of funny in a few spots, like when he mistaken Strange's name and how he talks to him, but he definitely felt like there was more to it that we didn't quite get a chance to see, and I really would have liked to have seen more of that. I mean, maybe there's a deleted scene that'll be included on the DVD that might go in a little bit more detail, or hell, maybe there'll be an entire extended cut that makes the movie a lot better. Oh wait, I forgot, this is Marvel we're talking about, not DC, that makes a supposedly better movie months later that we have to pay twice for. Finally, there's Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, and she is a real joy to watch too. She's a really graceful teacher to Strange, and can be quite the badass when she needs to fight. I really enjoyed both of her fight scenes at the beginning, and one at the end when she saves Strange and Mordo from Caecilius. I really enjoyed her speech to Strange in the hospital about time and death and what it means to kind of use those things as a way of giving the person the drive to live a meaningful life. And I really felt that theme was strongly supported throughout, the whole theme of time and what to do with the time you're given on this earth, and how you should use any ability you have, be it supernatural abilities or just regular talents that you have, to use it for the greater good and to make your life meaningful. And I thought that was a really strong theme to have. I should probably also count the Cloak of Levitation as a character, since it's a great addition to the film and probably has some of the best comic moments than any speaking character that this film has. So while the performances are great, what about the visuals? To talk about the visuals also goes into how you should see this film, whether it's in 2D or 3D. Now, short side story, I hate 3D, like with a burning passion. In fact, I know many people that hate 3D. It's really a cheap gimmick that makes you spend more at the movies for no reason. It's mostly catered to your 7-year-old kid that just thinks putting on glasses and things coming out of the screen is more engaging. But for anyone over the age of like 9, I think we're all pretty much not sold on the 3D gimmick these days, especially these days. It's definitely a lot less than it was 10 years ago. Most movies these days don't even film with 3D cameras anymore. They just convert it after the fact, and you're just not going to get the same effect as if you shot with an actual 3D camera. I've only seen like a handful of movies in 3D, and they were alright, nothing too special, nothing I was saying, oh, you definitely should see this in 3D, you definitely need to see it in 3D, run for 3D, it's great there. But this is completely the opposite. I can strongly say that the only true way to see Doctor Strange is in IMAX 3D. It is definitely worth that price of admission. The visuals in this movie really do support that format rather than just being sort of just gimmicky little effects. I also saw the film in 2D, and while the visuals are still impressive, there's definitely a lot more immersion, and it pops a lot more in 3D. And this isn't, like I said, the stupid in-your-face 3D where a director feels it's necessary to have things come at the screen for no reason. It's more like a depth perspective, and it really makes you feel more immersed in certain scenes. Some real good standout scenes with the 3D would be the opening fight in London, the scene where the Ancient One opens up Strange's eyes to the other realities, which was brilliant in 3D, and the battle in New York. And the battle in New York was probably the best, since there was so much things twisting around and so much coming in and out of the background, and it was insane with the 3D effect. It's still great in 2D, but you really feel more involved somehow with 3D, which is really weird, because I hate 3D, and yet I was really enjoying it with that for this film. The film's climax in Hong Kong is also brilliant, as the fighting between Strange and Caecilius happens with all the destruction is rewinding around them, creating some really cool obstacles. And the 3D here wasn't as strong as some of the other spots, but it was still just as immersive as it was, just not as strong as maybe some of the other scenes. Also, this is probably the most colorful Marvel movie to date. Some of the more insane visuals have some really bizarre colors. Some of the realities that Strange sees on his trip through like the other dimensions look like they were ripped straight out of Steve Ditko's and Stan Lee's art books from like the 60s. So it's insane how weird it looks. Also, a big shout out to composer Michael Giacchino for doing a really great job with the score. I hate how some comic book movies, even the Marvel ones, especially some of the more recent Marvel ones, have very forgetful scores. There's not like a theme to connect to the hero, and everything sounds so generic that you can easily take it and play it in any other generic action movie. And I hate that. I hate when these movies don't have themes that resonate with the characters. We've been spoiled with a lot of really good ones, like back in the day, the Superman and Batman movies, like in the 70s and then in the 90s, they had a really great theme. The Spider-Man movies back in like the 2000s with Danny Elfman was really good. But there's just so many of them that you can name, and they just don't have that score that really has a connection, like really kicks in. Like you could hum it on your way out of the theater, or you could like get excited when you hear it because you know that's the theme that's connected. Well, that's not the issue here at all in this movie. Giacchino created a really trippy theme for Strange himself. There's even a really beautiful piano version of it. Though the remix heard in the end credits that came out a few weeks ago that they released as the first thing on the soundtrack was probably the best by far. It's really, really unique. It sounds like nothing you've ever heard before, so it really sets it apart, and it's really good. Giacchino's film scores are some of my favorite for any movies he does, and this is just another one to add to the collection. I mean, all I can say really here is that thank God this guy is scoring the upcoming Rogue One and Spider-Man Homecoming movies, because I can't wait to hear what those are going to sound like. Real quick, I'll address the end credit scenes, which I felt were actually really good in setting up the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in addition to just setting up the next Doctor Strange film whenever Marvel decides to get around to putting out a date for that. Looking back on some of the more recent post-credit scenes we've had in these movies, I really do feel like the best ones are the ones that leave you excited to see what's going to happen next, rather than the ones used for comedy. Like the Swarmer scene in Avengers was funny, but yeah, kind of pointless. The scene at the end of Iron Man 3 where it was just Banner and Stark talking to each other, that was kind of pointless. Even Guardians of the Galaxy, the Howard the Duck thing was funny. It was a nice little cameo, but again, you sit through all credits, you want to see something that's really worth it. I really felt the ones that were just attached to Civil War were fine, but they easily could have been in the film itself, and they just vaguely tease that, yes, Black Panther is going to get his own movie, and Spider-Man's going to get their own movie. Thankfully, the Doctor Strange scenes are worth sitting through the credits for. The first teases Thor Ragnarok, showing us a meeting between Thor and Strange, and this scene is most likely going to actually be in the next Thor movie. Considering that it's been 3 years since we last had a Thor movie, and it's going to be 4 years until we actually get Ragnarok released, and the fact that Thor sat out the events of Civil War, this was probably the perfect time to show us what he's been up to, or what he's doing at this point. This scene is great and really getting people excited for Thor Ragnarok, especially since now we know Doctor Strange is going to play a role in helping Thor find Odin, so that's a really great setup for that movie. The other scene sets up Mordo, as I said, as the next villain Strange will face in the future, with Mordo now believing that sorcerers are the true culprits and enemies to the world order, and he's on a mission to stop them. And I really, like I said before, liked Mordo's transformation here, since in the original comics, Mordo was kind of just evil to be evil, with no real driving motivation. So I also hope going forward we see more of Mordo's origin, as the film kind of also lightly skips around that, saying how he's had a really screwed up past, he's done some shady things before he got to Kamar-Taj, and it would be really great if the sequel shed some light on that, maybe showed it, maybe delved a little bit more into it. I'm sure they will, but I really hope we see more of it, just going forward. Overall, Doctor Strange is a really great addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Sure, it treads some of the familiar territory that comes with being an origin story, but thanks in part to the great cast, the characters, the themes, and the impressive visuals, it really helps it stand out from the crowd. I also like how Marvel's really starting to introduce a ton of new heroes to their shared universe, if not only to build up the roster of heroes that we're going to see meet up in Avengers Infinity War, but also to show audiences new heroes with new powers that we haven't seen before, and it keeps the Marvel Cinematic Universe fresh, rather than relying on the same two heroes getting sequel after sequel. I mean, the Phase 2 movies in particular were like, okay, we're sticking with Cap, we're sticking with Iron Man, we're sticking with Thor, and we'll throw something a little new in there, which was Guardians. And I feel like now, ever since we hit Age of Ultron, we've kind of gone down a different road. We had Ant-Man, and looking forward, we've got Black Panther, we're going to have Captain Marvel, we're going to have a lot of new heroes with new abilities and new worlds to explore. So it's going to keep things definitely far from being stale and repetitive. And also, at least Marvel is taking the time to introduce all of these heroes in solo outings, giving them the time to be fully developed, rather than shoving them all into one film with rushed introductions and no build-up. Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad. I just hope that Marvel learns from Doctor Strange and starts to fix the lingering villain problem that some of their movies have. 14 movies in, and yet I can only really think of 3 or 4 really good villains that stand out, and 2 of those movies, it's Loki, so that really doesn't count, I guess, more than once. So if you're on the fence, you really should check out Doctor Strange. Even if you know very little about the character, this movie will definitely get you interested. If you're still not sold on checking out the film, I suggest maybe checking out the episodes of the Spider-Man animated TV series from Fox Kids, where Spidey teamed up with Strange for a couple of episodes, I think. And I think Mordo was in there, and so was Dormammu, so it's kind of a good setup for this. Or even check out the animated Doctor Strange movie from a few years back, which kind of follows the same plot as this movie, just with a couple of different villains thrown in. That's worth checking out too. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next review.